Welcome to the Coaching and Mentoring module in the framework of Curricular Pathways for Migrants Empowerment through Sport project. Speaking of leadership, let us first ask ourselves who is called as a leader. A leader is often confused with the role of head, the role of the one who is responsible for leading or managing a company, a group. However, a leader can be everyone regardless of the role you play, because being a leader is a choice. So anyone who decides to be a leader, anyone who decides to take responsibility for leading a group, can become a leader. Being a leader is not a choice that is made only once. Being a leader means taking responsibility for continuing to be a point of reference for others without pause. The first thing to ask us, in my opinion of course, is have clear which is our mission. Our main mission should be to encourage people take action to achieve a goal in order to achieve something. So, what is our prior mission as a leader? Our prior mission is to find a motivation. Motivation does not mean saying come on, let's go, or even imposing. It means being able to find the lever that triggers in people the desire to act. In Italian, the word motivation can be divided into motivazione. Motivo in Italian means reason, therefore, to have a reason to act, as it is represented very well by this simple image. A bit our task is to search, find something that can bring people from I don't want to do it, I can't do it, oh well, from I almost want, I can, I'll try, I can do it, I did it. To bring the conviction of being able to do, to achieve a goal. To become a leader as a choice goes through 3 steps. The first stage is to be accepted. So, our first action is to be able to create trust within the group. I have to do it, I have to be accepted, obviously through not imposition, but being consistent, being able to achieve goals, making people see in us a point of reference. So, to be accepted, to stop and once, always by example, to have been able to show how we can achieve a shared goal, to make others follow us. Basically, leadership can be enclosed in 3 sentences that can summarize what I have said so far. So, leadership means being able to engage people much more than imposing our decisions. And to be able to listen much more than to ask. And to be able to share much more than to order. How leadership is linked to volunteering. Meanwhile, let's take a step back. As organizers of sports clubs, sports organizations, as managers of sports organizations, we may work with groups of volunteers, and therefore we will have in our work team both professional and volunteer people. Basically the dynamics are similar, but the motivational lever changes, so probably change the reason why people want to contribute. Professionals do it by profession because they have chosen to invest their lives in that work. Volunteers do it because they are moved by the need and the desire to make a contribution. So what does it mean to be a volunteer? There is this phrase that is very beautiful in Italian: who gives the hours to others lives forever. Because being a volunteer allows you to give something that has a value that is not reputable, that is time. So being a volunteer means giving the most precious thing in the world, that is, time, to anyone who needs it. Because people choose to become volunteers. Basically, we generally have 4 areas: the spirit, the cognitive part, the social part, the physical part. The physical part means the economic part, or the part of satisfaction of basic needs such as, the place of work is close to home, working hours are optimal, etc. But usually for the volunteers this is not so important. The areas that are most called into question are, the spirit, the mental part, the social part. By social part we mean, I approach the world of volunteering because I have a great love to give and I feed on the love I receive back from my actions. Or I approach volunteering because I want to give my contribution with my ideas. I am very strong in something, so I want to make my contribution, and in return I want personal growth both in terms of training and in terms of personal experience. Or the spirit. So I feel like being a volunteer satisfies a need to be part of something much bigger than myself. Of these 3 areas, one does not exclude the other. It can be all 3. But to manage a group of volunteers it is important to keep these 3 areas in mind and perhaps understand which is the priority or majority in the person with whom I relate. Leadership and volunteering. What does it mean? Volunteers, as well as professionals, also need to cultivate leadership competence because they will still manage groups just as you manage groups and professionals. There are always 2 large containers to take into account. One is to take care and one is to manage the conflict. When I lead a group of volunteers it is important to understand what is the highest and strongest part, because volunteers approach out of love and passion or out of a desire to be a part of something bigger. So the part of the conflict, understood as enforcing the rules and remaining within a context, which in any case is a professional context, is sometimes difficult, so I have to find a balance. To summarize then, that person who influences a group more than he is influenced by the group, and this is very important. A mistake in which we often fall when we start to manage a group because we want to be accepted is a mistake in which we often fall. We try to please everyone a little. This is a mistake that must be avoided. It's important to always be very clear where I'm going and make sure that people understand why we're going in that direction, why we put these rules, why we make choices. The one who that precisely is aware of what he is doing and above all develops excellent communication skills, because the communicative coherence, I say what I do and I do what I say, is priority. This is one of the bases to generate trust in the people that we coordinate. Becoming a leader also means developing listening and relationship skills. There is a lot of talk about empathy. Empathy means trying to understand what leads people to do some actions, being able to put themselves in the shoes of others, or in any case try to understand what emotion the other person is feeling, or, in case I cannot reach this high level of empathy, always look for a synergy, a meeting point with those who relate to me. So with all the individuals I come into contact with, that I have to manage, I have to find a common point, something that we put together. Let us now see what a leader does and what is the best way to lead a group. If I choose to be a leader, I must also choose what leader I want to be. There are so many styles of group management, and I must surely know upstream that there are different styles, but then gaining experience will surely give us answers. So we thought we'd show you with some pictures how a leader can be. There can be a leader who runs with passive followers, there is the leader who is in the center and is acclaimed by the people around, there is the leader who is in the circle so shares, there is the leader who is slightly in a higher position, there is the leader who leads, who shows the way, there is the leader who orders, there is the leader who drags, there is the leader who is in the middle of the group, and there are different styles of conduct. If I were to ask you what is the best leadership for you, the best conduct of a group is probably to lead front or side by side. But in fact with experience you will learn that this is not the case. The leader is not the one who uses a single style. For sure we have said that in general the leader does not order, but tries to find a way to be followed. In fact, however, while leading a group it may happen that I have to use all these styles of conduction that you see represented in the figure, because the true leader is the one who is able to read the situations of using the best management of the group for that moment, that situation, that group. I always use this example. If I am in an emergency situation and there is a fire, certainly the task of a leader is not to make a working table and to say, well now then I am telling you what is the best solution to be able to face this emergency, but he must take matters into his own hands and order people what to do. It is an extreme example, but to make it clear that it is not a wrong thing. Adorning back with a slide, for example here where there is the megaphone that tells what to do, but it depends precisely on the situation in which we find ourselves. Okay, let's now move on to see two very important concepts in the management of a group. One is that of coaching and one that of mentoring. When managing a group it is very important to keep in mind two large areas. One is the group and one is the individuals who build the group. We talk about coaching when I go to work with the whole group, and we talk about mentoring when we work on the individual. Some key words that fall within the management of the group, in the youth and sports sector are these: growth, empathy, curiosity, contribution, friendship, fun, passion and experience. These are all words that must fit in and I must keep in mind when I lead a group in the youth sector. As you can see, you do not find in this case, victory or competition or success, because those are secondary. The first values that I have to share in the youth sector and that I have to cultivate and select in the people who work with me are just these. When I go to work with the individual I must always keep in mind that I must keep a balance between taking care of this person and still setting limits. Taking a step back with the slides we have seen before, and leader is the one who influences much more than being influenced, so I must always try to find a balance between love and limits. By love we mean listening to people, taking care of people, paying close attention to their needs. Sometimes a small gesture is enough to generate a much higher answer. Being flexible means being able to have clear general rules, but always being ready to make the exception for a person, and as I said before, always having an empathetic look towards the people you work with. On the other hand, precisely because we are within a group, and for a group to function, it must absolutely be structured, so make sure that people respect the rules and limits that are given. The structure, remain within the borders that we choose to give. I need to be able to generate respect for us, for people and for the group and for the users with whom they will go to work, and work a lot on authority. Being authoritative means being able to make sure that all this is put into practice, then finding this balance and gaining authority, putting together skills and trust. The more competent I am, the more obviously people recognize me as a professional, so the more they trust me. Trust. Okay, here we can open a very large chapter, but just keep in mind that what I said in the previous slides, I say what I do and I do what I say, so be coherent, is already a good slice, a good percentage of chance of generating trust. The next chart brings awareness that there are things in my opinion very important, and that when I start working in general, it could be that my skills are also below the average level or are not yet so high, but over time I can only improve. So the more I learn, the more I inform myself, the more I continue to train myself, the more my skills increase, and therefore over time the more I will generate confidence in the group I lead. What I have to be very careful about is that usually people, especially children, but also adults, somehow measure the confidence in the first moment and tends to be very high, but they want to have evidence. And probation always happens during the first meetings. Once conquered, I can only continue to feed it because it is a moment to lose it, and when the descent begins, then it is very difficult to go back, it is very difficult to regain it. So be very careful, worry less, when you manage people, about the skills they may have in the area in which you operate, but make sure that people are able to generate confidence in the people with whom they will then go to work. Going towards the conclusion, as a leader, as a manager of companies of a sports group, you must bear in mind that in the process of forming the group, people approach for a common passion and are a group we call a forced group. They are there because they have a common passion and a goal, but there is still no sharing between them. Of course, interpersonal relationships are triggered. There are people with whom you get along better, so form the so-called subgroups. These subgroups are not to be divided, as when we went to school, I divide you from the desk from your friend because if not you speak. This is wrong, it is a mistake. The subgroups must be fed. They should not be divided because we work better with the people with whom we get along, but what is our task as leaders? It is to be able to make sure that the various subgroups enter into a virtuous non-conflictual relationship and is transformed from small groups to a large working group. It's a bit like making a cake. The people we work with are the ingredients that can be more or less quality, and this is obviously our choice. But what we have to do is make a cake. Making sure that you mix up the ingredients in the best possible way so the cake we choose to make is ours. But it is we who choose what ingredients to put, how to use them, and which cake to create. Above all, it is true that there are recipes, so there are tools to better manage a group, but each of you is unique. Want to use the same ingredients and follow the same recipe, the cake I will make will be different from the one you will make. So pay attention to the power you have, always and in any case. Follow the recipes, do training courses and learn the tools because it is the best way to be able to build a winning team, but always be very aware of the power you have when you manage a group. The goal is to build a team that feels part of something bigger, that feels it can move in a protected environment where diversity and comparison do not generate judgment but rather an excellent opportunity to generate growth. Some tips. When you manage a group, always try to start from here. Define the borders in which there will be rules that you will give. So people will know that within your society there are some specific rules, and the suggestion to create rituals for which they give a sense of belonging, so, a way to enter, a special greeting, a way to start the activity, and a way to conclude that they are only yours. Focus a lot on teaching to be effective, always try to divide a very large goal and work on small goals that are easy to achieve. Our suggestion is to use the methodology of non-formal education. Learning by doing, learning by playing. Quindi also your instructors, the people who will work with you, will have to build activities and lesson plans based on doing and not on the instructor's explanation of how things should be done. Let's take away some technique and let's do it. Always remember that if you work in an amateur industry, the most important thing is that sport is a mean to educate people. Educating means bringing out their best potential and transmitting values. I close this presentation with a sentence that in my opinion is very nice and makes you think. As a leader, you are responsible not only for what you say but also for what you do not say. This means that the moment you step on stage and run a group, you are always visible in everything you do and everything you don't. All that you say and everything you do not say will be in the eyes of the people. That is why being a leader means taking responsibility not only once, not only in a moment, not only when you want it, but putting on clothes that you will have to wear, as a choice, in a continuous way. Thank you for your attention and see you in the next module.